You know those quiet neighborhoods where nothing really happens? Just birds chirping, sprinklers running early in the morning, and the occasional Amazon truck zooming by a little too fast? That used to be my life. Until one woman moved in, and everything changed. But before I get to her, let me tell you about the tree. We had this massive oak tree in our front yard. It wasn't just old, it was ancient, planted by my grandfather when he first bought the house over 50 years ago. Its roots ran deep, not just into the soil, but into our family's memories. Every fall, it would turn this beautiful golden red that made the whole street look like something out of a postcard. Kids would play under it. We'd hang lights on it during the holidays, and in the summer, it gave our house the perfect shade. It wasn't just a tree, it was part of our home. Of course, every neighborhood has its quirks. Some folks mow their lawns at 6 a.m., others always leave their trash bins out too long, but all of it was minor. Nothing that broke the peace. But then she moved in. A woman I'd later come to know, and not so lovingly refer to, as HOA Karen. She moved 2 doors down. And from day one, she had opinions, lots of them. At first, it was little things, friendly reminders posted in the community Facebook group about parking etiquette or keeping grass under 4 inches. Then came the anonymous HOA notices slipped into people's mailboxes. Your fence is too faded. Your hose isn't rolled properly. You could feel her trying to control the atmosphere, like she thought being part of an HOA gave her a badge and a title. To me, she seemed mostly harmless, just a little overinterested. But then she started eyeing my tree. I caught her once standing in front of my yard, arms crossed, just staring up at it like it had personally insulted her. I brushed it off at the time. Looking back, that was the first warning sign. Because that tree, it wasn't just a tree to her. It was a problem, an obstacle, something she believed needed to be dealt with. And that's exactly what she tried to do, on her own terms. Now, every neighborhood has one. That person who thinks the world spins just a little bit faster around them. In our case, her name was Linda, but to everyone on the street, she would forever be known as Karen, the self-appointed queen of the HOA. She moved in about a year after her divorce. A freshly painted minivan, sharply trimmed hedges, and a personality that screamed clipboards and complaints. While everyone else was focused on living quietly, Karen seemed laser-focused on one thing, enforcing. And I don't mean helpful reminders. No, this was the kind of enforcement that felt like living under house arrest. She started simple. Facebook posts about community standards, leaving passive-aggressive comments under neighbors' gardening photos, and anonymous HOA requests that, somehow, always seemed to mirror her personal opinions. One guy got a notice because his garbage bins were visible from the street at a non-regulation angle. What does that even mean? Karen knew, apparently, but soon it escalated. She'd pace around with her little notepad, jotting things down. She had this way of standing on the edge of her lawn with hands on her hips, like she was measuring people's freedom. You'd be backing out of your driveway and catch her writing something down, eye contact and all. It wasn't just me. Everyone felt it. At HOA meetings, she spoke the loudest, even when no one was listening. She once demanded everyone repaint their mailboxes in approved neutral tones. And when someone jokingly asked if beige was too flashy, she didn't laugh. Then came the tree comments. She approached me directly once. No hello, no smile, just, that tree of yours is becoming an issue. Confused, I asked, what kind of issue? Karen replied, visibility, safety, potential branch damage. It's technically a hazard. I'll be bringing it up with the HOA board. I told her calmly it had been here for half a century, well-maintained, not diseased, not blocking any traffic signs, and definitely not her problem. She didn't like that answer. From that moment forward, it felt like a silent war. Neighbors started whispering. Karen was becoming obsessed. Every time I'd mow the lawn or rake leaves near the tree, there she'd be, watching, arms crossed, like a hawk waiting for a reason to swoop in. Only I didn't realize she wasn't waiting for a reason. She was planning something. It was just another regular Tuesday. Nothing unusual about it. I left for work around 8:15 a.m., coffee in hand, waved to a neighbor, nodded at the mailman, and gave the giant oak tree its usual glance of appreciation before pulling out of the driveway. It never even crossed my mind that I'd come home that day to find part of my front yard looking like a construction zone, and my tree half gone. Around lunchtime, I get a call. My phone lights up with a name I recognize, Mrs. Devlin, my elderly neighbor who rarely calls unless it's serious. I pick up. Her voice is panicked. "There's a crew cutting your tree. Chainsaws, 3 of them. I told them you weren't home, but they wouldn't listen." My heart drops. I thought it had to be a mistake. Maybe something scheduled by the city. A utility trim? I tried telling myself it was nothing, but deep down it felt off. And when I heard Karen's voice yelling in the background through Mrs. Devlin's phone, I knew. It wasn't a mistake. I rushed home. 15 minutes later, I pulled up to my house, and what I saw nearly made my jaw hit the pavement. 3 men in neon vests were in my yard, slicing through thick branches like they were weeds. The beautiful oak was already missing one of its limbs. Sawdust covered my walkway. One of the men paused and looked up at me awkwardly, as if he knew they weren't supposed to be there. And then there she was, Karen, standing on the sidewalk, arms folded, clipboard in hand, just watching like she was the director of a movie she wrote herself. I jumped out of the car. "What is going on? Who gave permission for this?" Karen didn't flinch. "It's for community safety," she said. I contacted a service. This tree was a risk. I submitted a concern to the HOA, and I'm handling it. I snapped. "You're handling it? I never gave permission for this. This is my property, not yours." She shrugged. "As a board member, I have some authority." I pulled out my phone and started filming. The workers slowed down, realizing they weren't backed by actual authorization. I told them immediately, "Stop cutting. Right now." One of the guys muttered, "We were told this was all approved." Karen kept trying to talk over me, but I had already opened my doorbell cam app and started saving footage. I told her calmly but firmly, "You just trespassed. And this, it's vandalism." From the look on her face, I could tell she hadn't expected to be called out. Maybe she thought I'd just accept it. Maybe she was used to people backing down. Not me. The tree wasn't gone. Not yet, anyway. But the damage was done. And the worst part? That wasn't even the end of it. Because just minutes after I stopped the workers, everything went wrong. The workers had paused. My voice was shaking, not from fear, but from frustration. Pieces of our family tree, my tree, were already on the lawn. Limbs that had shaded generations now lay like discarded trash, while Karen stood there, clipboard still in hand, acting like she had the final say. But then it happened. Like something out of a movie, the skies went from calm to breezy. A strong gust of wind swept through the street suddenly. At first, it just rustled the fallen leaves. Then, the half-cut branch, still hanging, barely attached, began to groan. Everyone froze. One of the workers looked up, raised a hand, and shouted, "Whoa, move back. That thing's not stable." Before anyone could react further, a loud crack sliced through the air, followed by a deep, echoing thud. We all turned instinctively. The massive limb, the same one Karen had demanded be chopped, had snapped off completely. But instead of landing in my yard, it twisted mid-fall, as if guided by karma itself, and came crashing down onto Karen's roof. A cloud of leaves, dust, and panic filled the air. Screams. Not from pain, but from shock. Karen had been standing just far enough not to be hit, but her porch roof wasn't so lucky. A clean split right through the overhang. Shingles crumbled. Parts of her gutter tore straight off. Pieces of wood dangled dangerously from above. Silence blanketed everything for a moment. Even the workers just stood there, mouths slightly open. One of them finally muttered, "Well, that's gonna be expensive." Karen? She didn't speak. Her face drained of color. The clipboard had slipped from her hands and sat quietly on the concrete like it knew the story was over. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. She looked at me with wide eyes. Not in anger, but fear. Not of me, but of what came next. Some call it coincidence. But every single person on that street knew exactly what that was. That was karma, 300 pounds of it, direct from the trunk she shouldn't have touched. And it was only the beginning of the consequences that were about to rain down on her. After the loud crash, no one said anything for what felt like forever. You could hear the wind rustling through the broken branches, the buzz of a chainsaw finally powered off, and then Karen's breathing, shaky and loud. She turned to me slowly and asked, "You saw where it landed, right? That wasn't my fault, right?" I didn't answer, because it was her fault. All of it. And I had video evidence. I filed a police report that same day. Trespassing, destruction of property, illegal tree removal. I handed the officer the footage from my doorbell cam and about 3 minutes of cell phone video that showed everything, including Karen approving the cuts and arguing with me in the middle of my own lawn. The officers were professional, but even they looked amazed when watching the recording. So she hired a crew, without your consent, and they worked on your private property? That's correct. And this is her house where the limb landed? Yep. Okay then. Karen, of course, denied everything. She said she had filed a request with HOA and assumed it had passed. She claimed it was about community safety and that the wind, not her, caused the accident. Didn't matter, because turns out the HOA hadn't approved anything. She'd sent an email, but no meeting was held. No consent. No vote. Worse, she didn't have authority to act unilaterally either, even as a board member. And so, the HOA turned their back real quick. They issued a formal statement. The HOA did not authorize any tree removal on private property. This was the independent action of one resident. Oof. And now came the best part, insurance. Karen tried filing a claim for the damage, but the investigator took one look at the footage and denied it. Because she caused the damage herself, it was deemed an uninsurable incident. In simpler terms, she was on the hook for everything. Structural damage, porch rebuild, gutter replacement, possibly even fines for trespassing and city safety violations. All this because she couldn't mind her own business. And me, I didn't pay a cent. Not for cleanup, not for legal fees, nothing. Because I kept every receipt, every email, every frame of footage. And unlike Karen, I knew exactly where the property line was drawn. In the days that followed, something amazing happened. Our neighborhood got quieter, not because people were scared, but because people started breathing easier. Karen, once the most vocal force on the block, suddenly vanished from view. No more clipboard patrol walks. No condescending Facebook posts. No angry notes tucked under windshield wipers. People knocked on my door, not to nosy around, but to thank me. "She's been doing this for years," one neighbor said quietly. "You stood up when the rest of us didn't," said another. I didn't feel like a hero. I was angry, honestly. I just wanted my tree left alone. But somehow, this small act, filming, reporting, standing firm, shook something loose in our community. The HOA held an emergency meeting. And let's just say, Karen's seat didn't stay warm for long. There was no vote needed. The board requested her resignation and she gave it, without a word. For the first time in a long time, the block felt peaceful. Parents let their kids ride bikes up and down the street again, without complaints. People smiled when they passed each other. And nobody's measuring anyone's grass on Saturday mornings anymore. Funny how one event, one selfish act, can backfire so badly that it makes everyone else stronger. Karen may have tried to divide the neighborhood, but in the end, she helped bring it together. And that was something I don't think even she saw coming. You know, when I look back on all of it now, the chainsaws, the clipboard drama, the yelling, the tree limb falling like nature's version of a mic drop, there's one thing I keep coming back to. This all started over a tree. Not some massive legal dispute, a 50-year-old oak tree, minding its own business, giving shade to a home that had raised generations. A tree that had no voice, but had value, deep-rooted value. And all it took was one entitled person, pretending to have authority she didn't actually possess, to nearly destroy it. But here's what I learned. Just because someone speaks the loudest doesn't mean they're right. Just because they wear a badge, real or imaginary, doesn't make them above the law. And just because they act like they run the neighborhood doesn't mean they can run your property. That tree taught me something. Deciduous tree boundaries matter. Not just the ones marked in your yard, but the invisible ones we set with people who overstep. It's okay to say no. It's okay to speak up. And most importantly, it's okay to stand your ground. I stood mine. Karen lost hers, literally and figuratively. And I wasn't rude. I didn't scream or fight dirty. I just recorded. I documented. I responded with facts, not fury. Because here's the truth. When you handle egos with evidence, karma usually takes care of the rest. And when justice finally rolled down in the form of a 300-pound oak limb straight into Karen's porch roof, I didn't feel joy. I felt peace. People like Karen exist in every community. Maybe it's a neighbor. Maybe it's a manager. Maybe it's someone in your family. And dealing with them can feel exhausting, isolating, and unfair. But trust me, when you stand tall, like my tree once did, you'll find others standing with you. Maybe you're not fighting over a tree. Maybe your Karen is trying to take your time, peace, ideas, space, without permission. Your job isn't to fight them at their level. It's to protect your roots and know when to say, no, this ends here. Because when we let people like that keep cutting into our lives unchecked, sooner or later, something will fall. And it rarely lands where they expect.